Welcome to this tutorial on the Ultimate Personal Budget Planner. Before you start using your budget planner, please be sure to read through the Read Me First tab, as this tab contains important instructions and information. On this tab, you will enter in the names of all the accounts you wish to track income and expenses for. So you'll enter in the account name into this column, then you'll enter the starting balance, and then you will select what type of account it is. You can add bank accounts, including savings accounts, checking accounts, and current accounts, and you can also add other types of financial accounts, like a PayPal account or a credit card account, and so on. The maximum number of accounts you can add is 20. We're all done here. Let's move to the next tab. When you open your budget planner for the very first time, the Categories tab is going to look like this. It's going to be pretty much empty, apart from a small amount of category data that has already been added into the category table. Now, these categories are mandatory categories that must be used for very specific transaction types, and those transaction types are as follows: the transfer transaction type, the savings transaction type, and debt payment transaction type. Now let's break that down. If you are going to use the budget planner to record transfers between your various different bank accounts, for example, if you're going to record a transfer between two different checking accounts, then you must use the subcategory transfer between accounts, you must use the primary category bank transfer, and you must use the transaction type transfer. If you're going to use the budget planner to record deposits that you make into a savings account, then you must use the subcategory deposit into savings, you must use the primary category savings credit, and you must use the transaction type savings. If you use different categories to record such transactions, then you will end up with failed calculations and broken charts throughout the budget planner. If you want to use the budget planner to record payments that you make towards debts that you owe, then you must use the primary category debt account, and you must use the transaction type debt payment. However, with regards to the subcategory name, you can create any subcategory name that you like. Let's say in this example, you want to record payments that you make towards a vehicle loan, then you could type in something like vehicle loan. And that will work just fine. So let's say you're also paying back a master's degree loan. So you could type in master's degree loan. In the primary category, be sure to input debt account, and in the transaction type, be sure to select debt payment. If you use different primary category and different transaction type to record debt payments, then you will end up with failed calculations and broken charts throughout the budget planner. Regarding transaction type, you can choose from 5 different transaction types. You have the expense transaction type, income, savings, transfer, and debt payment. You must not edit or delete these transaction types. If you do edit or delete these transaction types, then you will end up with failed calculations and broken charts throughout the budget planner. Now, we will move on to the recurring events table. You will use this table to link your recurring bank account activity to their relevant subcategories. The end result will be that your bank transactions are automatically categorized when you paste them into the Transactions tab. Now we'll go through a demonstration of this, and it will make everything really clear to you. We're going to start in this instance with not using the recurring events table. You can see that the recurring events table is completely empty. Now back on the Transactions tab, I am going to bulk paste in several bank transactions, and let's see what happens. So what has happened? The subcategory, the primary category, and the transaction type column are showing alert messages. So what are these alert messages? For the subcategory column, where any cell displays the message manual categorize required, it means that it was not able to automatically identify and categorize the transaction, and therefore you are required to manually categorize the transaction yourself. And how will you manually categorize the transaction? Well, you will use the manual categorize column. Each cell in the manual categorize column contains a drop-down list, and this is a drop-down list of all the subcategories that you created in the category table. The subcategories are automatically copied over into the manual categorize column. Now let's manually categorize the first transaction and see what happens. So what's happened? When you manually categorize a transaction, the subcategory that you've selected is automatically mirrored into the respective cell of the subcategory column, and then the primary category and the transaction type are both automatically updated as a result. So when you don't use the recurring events table, you will have to go through each of your transactions one by one and manually categorize them into their respective subcategories. And if you're happy to manually categorize your transactions, then that's absolutely fine. However, if you'd like your budget planning to be as automated as possible, then you'd want to reduce the amount of manual data entry required. So let's move on to the next example where we demonstrate what happens when you do choose to use the recurring events table. As you can see, the recurring events table is filled out with information. So over on the left-hand side, we have the description column. And what you can see here are descriptions of bank account transactions. So each of these descriptions are then linked to a specific subcategory. Here we are on the Transactions tab, and I am once again going to bulk paste in several bank account transactions. So what just happened? Well, in the blink of an eye, each of the transactions were instantly and automatically categorized into their respective subcategory, primary category, and transaction type. I didn't have to do anything at all. It was instant and automatic. And that is the magic of the recurring events table. The recurring events table eliminates the tedious task of having to go through each transaction one by one and manually categorizing each transaction one by one. Instead, any transactions that you enter into the transactions table will be automatically categorized into their respective categories. In this next section, we'll walk through step by step how to set up the recurring events table. The recurring events table relies on the transaction descriptions that are on your bank statement. So the first step is to download 3 months worth of bank account transactions, and they must be downloaded in CSV format. And why is it recommended to download 3 months worth of transactions? Well, remember, we're looking for recurring bank account transactions, or what could be termed as repeated bank account transactions. So 3 months is a good time period to work with, wherein you should be able to find pretty much all the transactions that you make on a repeated basis. The transactions that you've downloaded should match the same structure that you see on your screen right now. They cover a 3-month period, and they are ordered from oldest transaction at the top to newest transaction at the bottom. And there are 3 columns, as you can see. Column C is the amount column, and the amount column is just a single column which contains both positive amounts and negative amounts. So your transactions should be arranged into this structure. But what if your transactions have downloaded with 2 separate amount columns, one for debits and one for credits? Well, we'll take a look at that example now and we'll see how we can quickly and easily fix that. In this example, the transactions have downloaded with two separate columns for amounts. So we want to combine these two columns into one single column, which contains both positive and negative amounts. You should use the formula which has been provided to you in the text document included in your files. So there will be a text file included, and this text file is called Formulas for Bank Transactions. And the formula that you need is the first formula here. And then I'm going to drag this all the way down. And as you can see, now these two columns have been combined into one column containing both negative and positive numbers. In this example, the transactions have again downloaded with two separate columns for amounts, credit column and debit column. However, the debit column does not have any negative numbers. So what we want to do is combine these two columns into one column, but we want the debit amounts to actually be negative numbers. And you are once again going to use the formula contained within the files. And this time you want to use the formula highlighted here. And now I'm going to click and drag that all the way down. And as we can see, the two columns have been combined into one, but this time debit amounts are now showing with a negative symbol, so you can see that they are negative numbers. The next thing we need to do is clean the transaction description. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at these transaction descriptions. You will see that some of these descriptions are just the company name. But then you will also see that some of these descriptions contain a lot more than just the company name. For example, this description here, it starts with the date, then it has the company name, and then it has what looks like a reference number with also square brackets and a dash. Now, we want to remove those extra characters and numbers. And the reason why we want to remove those characters and numbers from the description is because that's the part of the description that's likely to change with each transaction. And instead, we just want to keep behind the part of the description that's likely to remain constant with each transaction. And the part of the description that's likely to remain constant is the company name. So we want to remove everything else and just keep the company name. So how are we going to do that? Open up the text document called Formulas for Bank Transactions. This text document is included in your files. So copy this formula, and I'm going to paste the formula into the formula bar. And as you can see, just like that, all of the extra characters have been removed and it's just the company name that has been left behind. And you can see that compared to the original transaction description. So now we are just going to drag down this into all of the required cells. And hey presto, all of the descriptions have been cleaned and we are left with the company name only. Now we're going to copy all of these clean descriptions and we are going to paste into the transaction description column. So right click and paste values. Great. The next thing you're going to do is to create a unique list of all your transaction descriptions, and then you're going to paste that unique list into the recurring events table. We're going to use the unique function. So equals unique, and then select all of the descriptions in the description column, and then hit enter. And now you should have a unique list of all your transaction descriptions. Now you need to copy that unique list of descriptions and go to the budget planner to the categories tab. And you're now going to paste that unique list of descriptions into the recurring events table. So right click and paste values. Now all you need to do is go through each description and link each one to its relevant subcategory. Just spend the few moments required to do this. And remember, you only have to do this once. You won't have to do it again. The last step is to check that it's all working as it should. So go ahead and do that. Copy all of the transactions in your transactions download file, the date description and the amount column to the transactions tab, and then click into the date column and right click paste values, and hey presto, in an instant all of the transactions have been categorized according to their subcategory, primary category and transaction type. And that was instant and that was automatic. So this is the result that you should have achieved. And congratulations, you have just harnessed the full magic of the recurring events table. Now on this tab, you will input your monthly budget amounts for income, expenses, debt payments and savings. So the budget planner sheet uses the zero-based budgeting method, and you can see this zero-based budgeting tool up here at the top. And I'll explain more about that in just a moment. The budget planner sheet also has an income budget table, an expenses budget table, a debt payment budget table, and a savings budget table. Now, do not edit or delete any of the cells in the zero-based budgeting tool, as they contain formulas. And do not edit or delete any of the dark grey cells, rows, or columns, as these contain formulas. Now, going back to the zero-based budgeting tool, what is it and how does it work? The zero-based budgeting method ensures that every penny of your income is assigned to a specific purpose, either expenses, debt payments, or savings, therefore leaving no money unaccounted for. You can see on your screen right now that each of the months in the zero-based budgeting tool equals 0. And you can also see that each of the budget tables contain budgeted amounts. So this means that for each month, the income is equal to the expenses, debt payments, and savings. Now we'll go through exactly how to fill out these budget tables. When you open your budget planner file for the very first time, the budget plan tab is going to be empty, as you can see on your screen right now. Well, you start with the year column and you type in the current year, and you should enter it as a full 4-digit year, as you can see. Now, in this subcategory column, all of the cells in this column contain a drop-down list of the subcategories that you added into the categories tab previously. And because this is the income budget table, then the subcategories are the income subcategories. So I am going to select main job. You start with any subcategory that makes sense to you, and you just type in the budgeted amounts for each month according to the subcategory. And when I press enter here, just keep your eye on the zero-based tool in the January column, and just keep an eye down here in the total row again for the January column. So you saw that change. It's now telling us that we have $4,000 to be allocated for the month of January. Now I'm going to add each of these 4 different income subcategories. So I am just going to drag down this to the 4 cells. So as you can see, it's totaled up all of the income for the month of January, and it's showing that we have $4,400 to be allocated. And again, the total income row shows that amount as well. So then you go ahead and fill out the rest of the table with your budgeted income amounts for each month. You would then fill out the rest of the tables on this budget sheet in the exact same way. So after you've filled out all of the tables on the sheet, the zero budgeting tool should be 0 for each month. The savings budget table is not the tool that you would use to track your progress towards a specific savings goal, for example, saving towards a new car. To create a specific savings goal, you would use the Savings and Sinking Funds tracker. So what is the savings budget table for? The savings budget table is to plan how much you will transfer into a savings account in total each month. So in this example, it's saying that in January 2024, you will transfer a total of $260 into a savings account. Now, whether that's $260 into one savings account or whether it's $260 split across multiple savings accounts is neither here nor there. You're simply saying you're going to transfer $260 in total into a savings account. When you enter a new year and you want to create your budget for that new year, you will simply follow the same process that you went through when you created your budget for the previous year. This means you will use the same budget tables and you will simply type into the empty rows below the previous information. You must make sure that you type in the relevant new year in the year column as you fill out each row. So let's go through a demonstration. We want to create our new budget for 2025, so I'll type in 2025 into the year column. Then I'll select the main job subcategory, and I will enter $4,500 into the January column. And when I do that, you will see that the Zero Budget tool automatically updates. So I'll type that in, and as you can see, the Zero Budget tool automatically updates and shows that there's income to allocate for January 2025. I'll now go ahead and fill out all of the income categories and their budget amounts for 2025. So as you can see, the Zero Budget tool has updated automatically and it's showing all of the income to be allocated for each month of 2025. You would then go ahead and fill out the rest of the budget tables the same way you did before, and make sure you type in the relevant new year in the year column as you fill out each row. In order to keep your budget sheet as easy to read and as easy to reference as possible, it's a good idea to simply hide the rows for the previous years. And this makes sense as they're now historic and leaving them visible would make the sheet very cluttered. If you do need to look back at any budgets for previous years, then you can simply unhide the rows and then hide them again when you're finished. So that's the Budget Planner tab fully explained and fully demonstrated. On this tab, you will input the transactions for all the bank accounts that you're tracking. The main bulk of this tab is the transactions table here. This transactions table is where you will enter all of the transactions for the bank accounts that you're tracking. Over on the left-hand side, we have the current balances panel, and this displays the current balances for all of the bank accounts that you're tracking. And then across the top of the tab here, we have these table filters. And these filters provide a user-friendly and intuitive way to filter through the transactions table. Now here's an important point about the transactions table. As you can see on your screen, there are columns that are shaded in grey. Do not edit or delete any of the columns that are shaded in grey. These columns contain formulas and mustn't be edited or deleted. The transactions table contains multiple columns, so let's go through them. You have the date column, which is the date of the transaction, and these are arranged from the oldest transaction date at the top down to the newest transaction date at the bottom, and you must keep them in this order to ensure that the balances displayed for the bank accounts that you're tracking are calculated accurately and maintain their accuracy. Then you have the description column, which is the description of the transaction. And then you have the amount column, which is the amount of the transaction. Any cell with a positive value automatically has a green background applied to it, as you can see on your screen. Next, we have the manual categorize column. Each of the cells in the manual categorize column contains a drop-down list of the subcategories that you created in the Categories tab. The manual categorize column allows you to manually categorize transactions one by one individually. Now, the example that you can see on your screen right now, all of the transactions have been categorized automatically, thereby negating the need to use the manual categorize column. However, there are two scenarios where you might want to use the manual categorize column. The first scenario is if you just don't want to use the automatic categorize function and instead you'd prefer to manually categorize transactions yourself. In that case, you would use the manual categorize column and go through each transaction one by one and manually categorize them, as you can see on your screen right now. The second scenario where you might want to use the manual categorize column is if you want to manually override the automatic categorization of one or more transactions. Let me show you an example of what I mean. Let's take the first transaction here with the description interest, and it has an amount of $35. This transaction has been automatically assigned to the subcategory interest credit, the primary category variable income, and the transaction type income. Now let's say that for whatever reason I want to manually override these automatic categorizations. Then I would click into the manual categorize column, and let's say I'm going to choose the main job subcategory. Just keep your eye on what happens in the subcategory column. So what just happened? The subcategory that I manually selected has overwritten the subcategory that was automatically selected. So I selected main job, and the subcategory instantly changed to main job. The primary category changed to fixed income automatically, and the transaction type remains income, which is the correct transaction type. So that is how you manually overwrite the automatic categorization of a transaction. I'm now going to clear this manual selection, and you will see that the subcategory and the primary category revert back to their automatic selections. Next is the account column. Every cell in the account column contains a drop-down list of the accounts that you added in the Accounts tab. This column allows you to allocate transactions to their relevant bank accounts. And the last column we have here is the Notes column. This is an optional column which allows you to type in any notes about a particular transaction. Since it's optional, you can leave it blank if you want to. Now, I want to draw your attention to a transaction type that we haven't discussed before, and this transaction type is the refund transaction type. I'm now going to isolate the refund transactions in this table by clicking on the refund filter. Now, as you can see, the refund transaction type has a blue background, and this is just to give you a clear visual distinction. This table is smart enough to identify refund transactions in a completely automated way. Now let's take this first transaction here. This transaction has an amount of $62.94, and it's a credit amount. And we know that instantly because all credit amounts have a green background. And this transaction has been assigned to the clothes subcategory. Let's check for clothes on the Categories tab. Here we can see that clothes is actually an expense category. So if you receive a credit amount into an expense category, then this table is smart enough to understand that you have not received income like from a job. Instead, it can only mean one thing: you've received a refund. And the transaction is assigned to the refund transaction type. And this happens automatically and instantly. You don't have to do anything. Now let's look over at the left-hand side of the tab. Over on the left-hand side, we have the Current Balances panel. And this panel displays the current balance of all of the bank accounts you added in the Accounts tab. The current balance fields are completely dynamic and they update according to the transactions entered in the transactions table. And this is done completely automatically. Let me demonstrate this to you. Now let's take this transaction here. It's a $4,000 credit transaction and it belongs to the Blue Sky checking account. So keep an eye on the Blue Sky checking balance over on the left-hand side. I'm going to change this $4,000 amount to $5,000. And as you saw, the Blue Sky checking balance instantly increased by $1,000. Now let's do an example with a different account. Let's take this transaction here. It's a credit amount of $130 and it belongs to the North High Savings account. So keep your eye on the North High Savings balance here. I'm going to change the amount to $2,130. And you saw the North High Savings balance instantly update. And you can also affect the current balances by changing the accounts that transactions are allocated to. So let's take this transaction here. It's a $300 debit transaction and it belongs to the Blue Sky checking account. I'm now going to change this account to Integrity Savings. So that's going to result in two balances changing. The Integrity Savings balance will reduce by $300 and the Blue Sky checking account will increase by $300. So keep your eye on these two balances. And you saw both balances instantly update. At the top of the tab, you have filters for the transaction table. You can still use the filters located on the columns on the table, but these large panel filters at the top provide a very user-friendly alternative. Now we'll go through how to fill out the Transactions tab. When you open your budget planner for the very first time, the Transactions tab is going to look empty, just like this. The first thing that you'll want to do is activate the Current Balances panel. So you click in the white cell, and this is a drop-down list of the bank accounts that you added in the Accounts tab. So just go through and select the bank accounts that you added. As you do that, you will see that the current balance field automatically updates. And because you would not have entered any transactions into the transactions table yet, the current balances that you will see will be the starting balances that you entered in the bank accounts table on the Accounts tab. Regarding the filters across the top of the tab, these filters will automatically populate with data as you enter transactions into the transactions table. So how do you fill out the transactions table? The most efficient way to fill out the transactions table is to use the automation provided by the recurring events table. This means that you will simply bulk paste your bank transactions into the transactions table, and then instantly and automatically they will be categorized into their respective categories. Now, if none of that makes any sense to you, then go back and watch the section about the recurring events table and then come back to this section. So assuming you've been through the section about the recurring events table, we'll start this example from the point that you've downloaded your bank transactions in a CSV format and you've arranged them into the right structure. So from here, you'll want to clean the transaction descriptions and you'll use the formula previously discussed and which is provided to you in the text document. I'm going to paste that formula into the formula bar, and then I'm going to click and drag down the required number of rows. And while the clean descriptions are still all selected, I'm going to Control-C to copy, and then I'm going to go into the transaction description column, right-click, paste values, and then I'm going to copy all of the transactions, and then into the budget planner in the transactions tab, click in the date column and right-click, paste. And just like that, all of your transactions have been automatically categorized into their respective categories. Now, these transactions in this example are for the Blue Sky checking account, but the balance hasn't updated yet, and that's because we need to allocate the transactions to that bank account. And this is really easy. So we'll just select Blue Sky checking in the first row. And because these transactions are all for Blue Sky checking, we can just click and drag it all the way down as many rows as needed. And now you can see the Blue Sky checking balance has updated. So in just a couple of minutes, you have entered your bank transactions and they have been automatically categorized in the blink of an eye. You've now just eliminated around 90% of the manual data entry normally required in a budget planner. We're all done here, so let's move to the next tab. The month report tab is split into two sections. I will zoom out so that you can see both sections together. Here in the upper section, you have the budget vs actual financial report. And down here in the lower section of the tab, you have the bank account report. Now, the budget vs actual financial report shows your financial picture on a month-by-month basis. This report is where you compare your budgeted amounts for expenses and income with the real actual amounts that you spent and received. As you can see on your screen right now, you select the different months of the year and all the charts update completely automatically. And scrolling down to the bank account report, the same principle applies. You select the different months of the year and all the charts update completely automatically, as well as all the data in this bank account grid here. And this bank account grid contains formulas, so don't edit or delete anything in this grid. The grid will populate with data automatically and it will update the data automatically. Now, all of the charts on this tab are created for you in a completely automated way. You don't create any of them yourself. Instead, the charts create themselves automatically based on the data you enter in the Budget Planner tab and the Transactions tab. At the top of the tab, you have the Year and Period selector. Now, the Year selector is a drop-down list that displays a list of years for which you have data in the Budget Planner. And then there is the Period selector. And the Period selector is a drop-down list which contains all 12 months of the year, as well as a year-to-date option. Now, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that the Year selector is directly linked to the Year column of the Income Budget table. And let me quickly demonstrate what I mean by that. Well, right now, you can see the Year selector has 2024 and 2025. Now, I'll just pop over to the Budget Planner tab. I'm going to quickly unhide the rows for 2024. And now I'm just going to delete all of the entries in the Year column. Now back into the month report, I'm going to clear the entry that's already in the Year selector and all the charts vanish. And as you can see, there's now no years to choose from because it's directly linked to the Year column of the Income Budget table. So back to the Budget Planner tab, I'm going to add in the years again, and then back to the Month Report tab. And you can see that we've now got 2024 and 2025, and all the charts come back again. Over on the left-hand side, we have the Month Summary table. The Month Summary table gives you a very convenient at-a-glance view of how your budgeted amounts compare to your actual amounts for that month. This is a high-level summary and allows you to quickly establish whether you met your goals for the selected period. Next, we have the expenses by subcategory, and this is a budget vs actual chart. The chart allows for detailed analysis of your expenditure by subcategory. Next, we have the expenses by primary category chart. Again, this is a budget vs actual chart. It allows for analysis of your expenditure, but this time at the higher level view of primary category. Next, we have the top 5 expenses broken down by subcategory. This donut chart allows you to drill even further into your monthly expenses by ranking the subcategories that have the highest monetary spend. Next, we have the 3 biggest overspend chart. This chart shows the 3 subcategories where you overspent the most compared to the budgeted amount. Next, we have the 3 biggest underspend chart. This chart shows the 3 subcategories where you underspent the most compared to the budgeted amount. Next, we have the money out by percentage chart. This pie chart allows for analysis of your expenditure by primary category, but this time it's broken down by percentage instead of monetary amount. Next, we have the income by subcategory donut chart. This donut chart displays your income for each month broken down by subcategory. Next, we have the debt payments by subcategory chart. And then below that, we have the savings deposit chart. Now scrolling down to the bank account report section. Here we have the count of transaction types chart. This shows you how many of each transaction type went through your account for the selected month. The account distribution chart here shows you what percentage of your total balance each individual account is responsible for. The account balance chart here shows you what the balance of each account was at the end of the selected month. And this bank account grid here shows you how much money was deposited into each account for that month, how much was withdrawn out, and then the balance of the account at the end of the selected month. Now we're all done here. Let's move on to the next tab. The Annual Overview tab is a very thorough and comprehensive budget fees actual report. The Annual Overview report is designed to give you detailed monetary figures for every single line item of expense, income, debt, and savings deposit. At the top of the tab, you have the Year Selector. The Year Selector is a drop-down list that contains a list of years for which you have data in the budget planner. In the upper area here, it has a budget fees actuals chart for income and for expenses. It also shows your overall progress towards debt payments and your savings deposits. Then further down the page, as you can see, it contains a very detailed expense tracker. It also contains detailed trackers for debt, income, and savings deposits. All of the trackers contain formulas in every cell, so don't edit or delete any of the trackers. Now, all of the charts and all of the trackers on this tab are created for you in a completely automated way. You don't create any of them yourself. Instead, the charts and the trackers create themselves automatically based on the data you enter in the Budget Planner tab and the Bank Transactions tab. Now, as you can see, when you select a different year, all of the charts update completely automatically. And likewise, for the trackers, when you select a different year, all of the trackers update completely automatically. Now, we're all done on this tab. Let's move on to the next tab. On this tab, you will create specific savings goals and track your progress towards those goals. The main part of the tab are these individual savings goal trackers. Now, there are 20 of these individual goal trackers, as you can see on your screen right now. So that means that you can save for up to 20 different goals at the same time. Over on the left-hand side, we have the Funds Allocation panel. Now, this panel displays the current balance of all relevant bank accounts, as well as what amount of that balance you currently have allocated to specific goals. Let's go through a quick demonstration of how to fill out a tracker from scratch. When you open up your budget planner for the very first time, the Savings and Sinking Funds tab will be empty, just like what you can see on the screen right now. The first thing that you'll want to do is activate the Funds Allocation panel. So you would click into the pale beige cell, and this is a drop-down list of the bank accounts that you added in the Accounts tab. So you just go through and select the bank accounts, and the various balance fields will automatically update. So you have the current balance of the account, the amount allocated to goals, and the amount left available to allocate. Now, these current balance figures are taken directly from the Transactions tab, so these current balance figures will always be accurate and up to date. Now, as you can see, all of the savings goal trackers are in grey, and that's because they have no savings goal entered into the savings goal field. As soon as you do that, the savings tracker will come to life with colour. So let's go ahead and type in a goal. And just like that, the tracker has come to life with colour. Next, we have the goal amount field. So you would type in here the total amount that you want to save. And as soon as you do that, you will see that the progress chart will immediately appear here, and the fields in this summary area here will automatically update. Next, you have the account field, and this is asking you what bank account do you want to use to save towards this particular goal. And for whichever bank account that you choose, all the contributions that you make towards this goal would then be deducted from that particular bank account. So I'm going to choose Integrity Savings. Next, you have the starting balance field. Now, this is an optional field, and what this means is there an amount that you want to immediately set aside towards this goal? And if there is, then you would type it in here. But it is an optional field. So if there isn't an amount that you want to immediately set aside for this goal, then you can just leave it blank. Now I'm going to enter $800 here. And when I do that, you will see that for Integrity Savings, the allocated to goals balance and the available to allocate balance will update to reflect that. You'll also see the progress chart update, and you'll see the fields here in the summary area will also update. So that all happened completely automatically. Now, regarding this summary section here, do not edit or delete any of these cells in this summary section, and that's because these cells contain formulas. Next, we have the contributions table here, and this is where you would enter in all the contributions that you make towards that particular goal. The contributions you enter into this table will result in the goal tracker updating and the relevant bank account updating. So I'm going to enter in a $500 contribution, and you will see for Integrity Savings, the allocated to goals and available to allocate fields will update, the progress chart will update, and this summary section here will also update. So everything updated completely automatically. And that's how you fill out a savings goal tracker. Let's move on to the next tab. On this tab, you can take advantage of automated calculations to help you determine the quickest and most affordable way to repay your debts. Now, there are a lot of numbers and a lot of data on this tab, but don't worry, 99% of it is generated completely automatically. You only have to enter a very small amount of information, and then all of the numbers and all of the data is generated completely automatically. Now, this debt calculator can track and manage up to 20 different debts. So how do you actually fill out and use this debt calculator? Well, let's go through that example right now. When you open your budget planner for the very first time, the Debt Calculator tab is going to be empty, just like what you can see on your screen right now. Over on the left-hand side here, you have the Debt Summary section. Now, the grey cells in this section contain formulas, so do not edit or delete any of the grey cells in this section. The data here will update completely automatically. Now, as you can see, all of the individual debt trackers are in grey and they contain no information. Now, these debt trackers contain formulas, so do not edit or delete any of the cells, rows or columns in these debt trackers. As soon as you enter information into the debt information table, these debt trackers will come to life with colour and they will automatically populate with information. To use the calculator, first fill out the balance date field with the date that you'll start making payments. Then fill in the debt information table with the name of the debt, the balance of each debt, the interest rate and the minimum monthly payments. the initial monthly payment field here will automatically calculate your total minimum monthly payment. Next, review your budget to determine how much you can afford to pay towards your debts each month. Then enter that amount here in the new monthly payment field. The difference between your new monthly payment and your initial monthly payment becomes your initial snowball, and that's the extra payment that goes towards your first debt. This snowball amount will grow as each debt is paid off. Next, decide what debt to target first. There are various strategies available, and you can select them here in the Strategy drop-down field, and you'll see the results table update to show you the order that you're going to pay off your debts, the total interest costs, and the payoff dates for each debt. All strategies use what's known as the snowball effect, and that's illustrated by the blue bars here in this chart. Since your total monthly payment stays constant, the snowball grows as debts are paid off. Now, let's select the lowest balance strategy and see the outcome. This is commonly known as the snowball strategy, and this approach focuses on eliminating the smallest debts first. However, the disadvantage is that it may result in you paying a lot more interest overall. In this example, we can see the total interest paid overall would be more than $46,500. So next, let's try the highest interest rate strategy, which is known as the avalanche strategy, and this is designed to minimize the overall interest paid. So as you can see, using the avalanche strategy, the total interest paid is roughly $7,000 less compared to the snowball method. But what if you want to repay debts in a custom order that's specific to you? With this calculator, you can do exactly that. So in the debt table, you'd input the exact order you want to pay off your debts. So I want to pay the unicorn card first, so I'll give that the number 1. Then I'll pay off the Barclays card second, so I'll give that number 2, and so on. Then after you've done that, click on Strategy and select Custom Lowest Number first. This means you'll start with the debt numbered 1 and then work up to the highest numbered debt. And now you can see the results table update to reflect the custom order you've created. Now moving on to the payment schedule section. This section breaks down month by month how much you're due to pay towards each of your debts. The numbers here are created and updated automatically based on information in the debt table and the debt payment strategy that you've chosen. Now, another powerful feature of this calculator is this additional column here. And you'd use this column for extra one-time payments above and beyond your normal snowball amount, or for one-time reduced payments below your normal snowball amount. In this example, the snowball amount is $135. But if you have a good month and can pay more than the snowball amount, then enter the extra amount here. I'll add in $300. And then all of the calculations will update automatically to account for the additional payment you've made for that particular month. And then in contrast, if you have an unexpectedly bad month and can't pay the full snowball amount, then you can reduce the amount of the snowball up to the total snowball amount. Let's say we want to reduce the snowball amount by $35. Then just enter in minus 35. And then all of the calculations will update automatically to account for the reduction in payment for that particular month. If interest rates change, make a new copy of the Debt Calculator tab, update the date, the balances, the rates and the payments, and reassess your strategy to find the most effective approach. So that's the Debt Calculator tab explained. We're all done here, and that concludes this tutorial.